pull A off for discussion.
And I'd like to pull B off for discussion.
So noted. A and B will be held over for discussion. Moving on, we will then move to summary action items held over. Ordinance 2012-06. A, that was moved over by Mr. Short.
After reading that, and because of the, I'd have to say, controversy during the election with saying that, raising of salaries to get compensation benefits as far as retirement, and seeing that, it will cost $9,000 a year, if it's 2 years more that Brian and I are on it if we're not reelected. If we continue that way, it'll go up to 15,000. Is that right? Per year? And I don't see a reason to, if it's something that the state said you no longer have to abide by, we are part-time employees.
We are. Could you discuss the fiscal impact that this will have?
Sure. You're correct that because of the change in the law, the existing council members that were on board prior to the last election are entitled to continue participating in the retirement system. There is no such legal requirement for the newly elected council or mayor. And that the discussion that was had that led to this being brought forward for discussion was should there be an equivalent or alternative retirement contribution of an equal amount available to the newly electeds. The amounts we're talking about, it's currently 15.76%. That's scheduled to go to 18.03 on July 1st. So there is a cost of just over $9,000 for the 4 individuals if you implement this the way it's drafted for the 1-year cost for fiscal 12-13. So that's the dollar amount that you're referring to. And again, this is a choice the council has to make in terms of whether or not to provide an alternative retirement contribution. And if you decide to do it, at what amount? There are a number of options besides the one that was proposed tonight.
What does that actually equate to? I'm sorry, Mayor, go right ahead.
If I could ask you just one question concerning that. First of all, if the law had not been changed, the city would be encumbered for those amounts anyway. Is that correct?
Yeah, under the existing city ordinance, the previous councils had encumbered the city to continue to pay that.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, it will go away in 2 years. If we're not elected, it will go down. And what do you do with employees, let's say that are part-time? Are they able to do the same thing? Is it just for the council? Is it for part-time employees? Is it for, you got to look at this both ways.
From the way the statute works, the decision was made by the legislature that part-time council and mayors were no longer going to be eligible for retirement. And that now none of the seasonal or part-time city employees are eligible for retirement. It's only full-time or what we call regular part-time, more than 0.75 FTE that are eligible for retirement.
And in most cases, don't you have to work for a certain amount of time for the city to have that become applicable?
Actually, it depends on what status you're hired into.
You have to be re-elected after 4 years to have that become applicable for you.
I think you're.
Is this the vesting that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think we're confusing
Let's talk about
vesting with
vesting
term.
so that we all understand
Okay.
that for both electeds and for regular employees, there's a 4-year vesting for the original Tier 1 retirement system. There's also a 4-year vesting requirement for the new Tier 2 that only applies to the new full-time employees of the city. And so there is a vesting requirement as to when you would actually get that money. Now, we are the last remaining city in the old contributory retirement system, which means that 6% of the money that you as elected officials and employees hired prior to last July 1st is actually contributed by the employee, even though it's paid by the city. So that money is refundable if you do not vest. So 6% of the 15.76% is refundable.
Okay.
So how much money is presently paid per part-time employee into this defined benefit program?
For elected officials, it's
For elected officials.
15.76% of their base salary, and the base salary is just around $11,000.
Okay, So 8%, 8 point whatever percent of 11,000. What does that roughly equate to?
Well, you're asking me to do math, and that would be really dangerous. And that, it's around $1,000.
It's around $1,000. Okay. And that's per,
Per elected official,
per month or per year? The
per
1,000
year. It's an annual cost.
1,000. So the annual cost per year is $1,000.
That's correct.
Okay. So, what we're talking about here is if we don't pass this tonight, then two council members could, assuming that there's the residents of their districts decide to continue to elect them, there would be a pay equity or pay disparity. Is that correct then? in
There
essence?
would be a pay disparity. Now, the law does not require you to resolve the pay disparity, but there
Okay.
would be one.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing I bring up at that, I think going into this full well, when you were running for office, knew that there was a pay parity because that was going to change. That is something that was known before. I mean, this was discussed well in advance, and I really think that's how, some people were accused of giving raises just for this kind of, parity, if you want to put it, but it no longer existed, and that was known at the time that was going to happen.
Well, I understand, but at the same time, when the subject came up about 3 weeks ago, the requests from both of you were to, well, yes, we'd like to go ahead and have the pay increase so we could continue to receive
Well, no,
that
I-
benefit from the city.
Well, I think
So
everybody,
rather than
Right.
putting us all on an equal basis.
right, everybody got to sign a paper saying, would
That's
you
right.
like an increase? Because we'd have
Yeah.
to have an increase, and I
Yeah.
admit that we signed an increase.
Yeah.
If you signed an increase, I have no clue, if that's what it was for.
I'd
If
like
you
to make
decided
a
do that.
comment here. I think for the sake of those participating residents, public, you probably feel like you've come in the middle of a 3-act play. Let me just define what's being discussed here in general terms, because it's really interesting. It's the kind of stuff that makes the newspapers and gets people inflamed. Because of a change in the Utah state law, elected officials who began their terms after July 1, 2011 are no longer eligible for the participatory plan that the state had in place, whereby some percentage of their salary was in fact contributed to a retirement plan. Therefore, as you're looking at us, 4 of us are not eligible for this, and 2 of the continuing council members are eligible for it, and therefore, as we sit here today, we're effectively being paid at different rates, which is nominal, by the way, but different. And so the proposal before us is whether or not to separately contribute on the part of those who are not eligible to participate in the state plan an amount equal to what the other 2 council members who are continuing are receiving as a result of their participation. There's a lot of nuance and subtext to this, and maybe some more of this will come out in the discussion here, but that's what we're talking about, if that's helpful to anyone.
Is there any additional cost to the city if we were to have a retirement plan that we, as the new council members, were eligible for, which would only be contributed to by us instead of the city? Is there significant administrative costs involved in doing that, or?
No, if individual members chose to make 401k contributions, you're free to do that as members of the city. And that the cost, the question would be whether the city's paying it or you're paying it directly, but moving your money out of your check is a minuscule administrative cost.
And there is a 401K. What I brought up during my campaign, and so any of us can elect to do that separately. What we're talking about here is the pay disparity that comes about because not of the 401K, but because of what's known as the defined benefit program or the non-contributory program. And what that means is that whether you want it or not, the only indicator of whether or not that you get that amount contributed to the defined benefit program run by the state is whether or not the city pays it in, which they were required to do, and the only trigger there was to make sure that the pay was of sufficient level. And the point that I made during my campaign was the fact that It was done, the pay increase, there was a pay increase going back several years, as you know, October '08, that was done on a summary action calendar. There was no discussion, there were no minutes about it, and that was the point that I made about it, the hay, so to speak, that I made about it, about my political predecessor.
Well, I
If
think it
you-
was
and if
still-
you- And I will
Yeah.
tell you this right now, you beat me to the punch on pulling A, because my feeling has always been, anything that like we do on this is, if you go back in the minutes since I've been in office, I don't like anything on this. I like very limited things on the summary action calendar. About the only thing I like on the summary action calendar is the approval of the PAC board budget, which they've already gone through. Everything else, my personal feeling is that it needs to be open, in the minutes, discussed, so that the citizens can say, yeah, I agree with this, or, you know, what are you all doing, or that type of thing. And so I'm saying that because I would have pulled A off if you hadn't done so. But that being said, it comes back to the basis of a pay disparity, a pay disparity. Now, the other thing is.
But there would always be a pay disparity.
No, because in 2 years, let's assume a hypothetical. In 2 years, let's say that we go through with this today. If we were to approve it today, my personal feeling is then the issue should be raised in 2 years if neither one of you is then eligible. The issue can also be raised again at the beginning of next year when the pay rates change, which change the minimums that are required in order for the city to participate in the non-contributory defined benefit program.
Amen.
Which applies only to you and Brian. And so we can turn around and address the issue then and say, no, we're not going to do that. The other problem is if somewhere down the road, we also say, if we say no, but you all are getting elected and we or continue to get reelected, and then we say, well, yeah, now it's time for a cost of living increase for the city council comparative to what we're already doing for city staff, then that would automatically kick in right away, once again, with both of you. So how do we handle that again? Do we say no because you're already in the system? Or if they're out of once they're out, it stops, can they start back up? Let me make sure I've got that right.
Well, the way you're doing it, you're saying, if, let's say I didn't get elected, let's say I ran and I didn't get elected 4 years after that I came back in, I could come in at your plan again, where if we didn't do anything after 2 years, there is no plan.
Well,
It's not a cost to the citizens, that's an extra cost.
And what I'm saying is a matter of pay equality. This is being done this would be done on the 401K, so it can easily be terminated
Well,
at
can't
any
you do
point
your
in
401K anytime? Because I contribute to a 401K.
Yes, we're not talking the 401K, though. What we're
Right.
talking is pay equality. So what Mr. Cunningham is saying is, you're going to be paid $1,000 more a year than I am for the same thing that you're doing on the city council. And as much as I like you,
You love me.
I love you. I love you as much as I love you. My question is that fair? And you're saying, yes, it is.
Well, it is because you knew about it going into this.
You know what? I did not fully grasp it. However, I accept it, but I raised the issue of pay equality. And I was happy to turn around and say, yes, because you all were already in the program, it's fair to raise your salaries
But
so
you-
that you can continue to benefit from the
Right.
program which you
Well,
are.
wait a minute, wait, you
were-
say raise my salary, you have the same effect
Yeah,
if you
but
want to raise it.
but you don't, but you don't know whether
I
or
don't
not
know,
raised
and
it.
that's what I'm
And
saying.
And what I'm
You
saying
have the
is.
same
Okay,
opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there other questions? I think we understand each other's points.
I understand. My
That's,
my thing is in 2 years, if we don't do this, it's over, it's done, we don't have to worry about it, because it sounds like it's something that state did to kind of save the city monies.
No,
You know,
it's not over in 2 years. If you get reelected, it's not over. It's still,
That's
the
right,
saga
it's not over.
continues. It's not over unless you either are voluntarily step down, don't run for reelection, or somebody decides to run against you and beats you. It's not over. That's
Mr.
not a
Mayor?
guarantee.
yes.
So on behalf of pay equity among members of our city council, I move that we approve ordinance 2012-06.
Do I have a second?
I will make a secondary motion. I'll move that we don't approve.
I'll second.
Second.
ordinance 2012-06.
You're seconding which motion?
Larry's.
Without further discussion, the first motion fails. The second motion is on the table. The motion is to disapprove ordinance 2012-06. And as much as this is an ordinance, we will require a roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
The motion to approve, the motion to disapprove passes 4-1.